Good afternoon. I thought I'd do a special on different trains and the wrecks that occurred in the early 1900s. Some very interesting pictures I have found, and a short summary of what I had seen for information on them. I hope you enjoy. Now, in 1910, there was a terrible accident that had a place that was found in 1893 by the Cascade Range. It was near the Stevens Pass, but in Wellington, there was an avalanche. For 9 days, they had lots of snow, and people were trapped in two trains, and some people were actually staying in the depot. Most of them were staying in the trains when a 10-foot high mass of snow, half a mile long and a quarter of a mile wide, fell toward the town, missing its hotels and things, but it hit the railroad depot. Many were asleep. The impact threw the trains 150 feet downhill into the Ty River Valley. 96 people were killed, including 35 passengers, 58 northern employees of the trains, and 3 employees of the depot itself. 23 people did survive and were pulled from the wreckage, but railroad employees were immediately rushed from the hotel and other buildings where they had been staying, but it still ended up killing 96 people. On June 5th, 1910, in DeWitt siding, it's just south of Lowell, Indiana, MP 46.5 passenger train, number 4, slammed into the rear train number 72. They were traveling close to 55 miles an hour, killing 1. This was a bad accident, dated August 7th, 1897, where a man was roasted to death. Engineer was jammed against the hot boiler in the wreck. There was a collision between the Pennsylvania fast train and the Monon engine. Other trainmen escaped without serious injuries. Someone's blunder, William Martin, engineer on the Moron, is dead, and a large amount of the railroad property is damaged. The fast train from Chicago Division of Pennsylvania, due here at 3:30 this morning, ran head-on into a Monon's engine hauling a cut of cars. The crash could be heard for squares. The hissing of steam and the shouts of men awakened one and everyone in the neighborhood off the Market Street crossing where the accident occurred. Someone turned in a fire alarm. In short time, Chief Barnett was at the scene. On the Monon engine was the William Martin, who was the engineer, and Thomas J., who was the fireman. It was late, and the operator let the engine and cut of cars onto the right-hand track. The engine had almost stopped when the headlight of the Chicago Express was seen around the curve, and the train whistled for the Washington Street crossing. He blew the whistle of his engine, warning the other train to stop, but it was going too fast. Accounts differed on the speed it was making, but most of the train would say it was running fully 25 miles an hour, and the engines were driven into each other so hard that they were almost welded together. The Chicago train was in charge by conductor Thomas Davidson and the engineer Ray Bennett. They shut off the steam and threw it in the air, hoping to stop the train, but it was too close. Him and his firemen jumped and saved themselves, leaving themselves just with a little bit of injuries. When it was seen that the express train would not stop, Fireman J. on the Monon engine called to Martin to jump, at the same time springing from the cab. Martin attempted to jump, but his foot was caught by something, and before he could extract it, the crash came. He was pitched forward and put us into the boiler. The tank loaded with coal was pressed up against him, and there he was slowly roasting to death. His screams and calls for help were awful to hear, and once or twice he spoke the name of his wife. What a sad story. This one goes way back to May 4th, 1892 in Otis, Indiana. During a severe storm, and an 11-car freight train drawn by locomotive 27 derailed after it washed out north of Otis, Indiana. Killed were the engineer John Murray and fireman Jim Bowen. On March 17th, 1906, in Murdoch, Indiana, a passenger train derailed near Murdoch with many injuries.